Hi, my name is Jay Sugarman, and I want to welcome you to Museum Open House. This ongoing series features and highlights many of the outstanding museums and other cultural institutions. The main purpose of most programs is to inform viewers about current and upcoming exhibits, various programs, resources, and other opportunities that are available for the general public. Today, via Zoom, we're fortunate to have as our guest Abby Battis. Abby serves as the Director of Historic Beverly, an organization dedicated to preserving and interpreting the rich history of Beverly and its remarkable role in the American story. As we'll soon hear, Abby has been instrumental in bringing to life the current exhibition entitled The American Revolution, The Story of the War in 28 Paintings. This is a rare and extraordinary display of artworks originally commissioned by Senator Henry Cabot Lodge in the 1890s to illustrate his influential two-volume history, The Story of the American Revolution. Abby has also played an important part in supporting the development of Ken Burns's recently aired American Revolution documentary series. Let's start by meeting Abby and then hear about the American Revolution, the story of the war in 28 paintings, the John Cabot House, and the collaboration with one of America's most celebrated documentarians. Welcome, Abby. So delighted to be able to be here.
Thank you so much, Jay. I'm so excited to be here to talk about everything we have going on at Historic Beverly.
Oh, there's so much. I had the wonderful opportunity to visit about 2 weeks ago. Learned so much from touring the exhibit, eager to find out more and have you inform viewers. But before we jump right to that, I think it would be of interest if you briefly add perhaps just a little more about your background, professional interests, and what your current role entails, please.
Sure. So I'm the relatively new, about 8 months now, a new director here at Historic Beverly, but I'm not new to Historic Beverly. Before becoming the director, I was the associate director for collections, which means that I was taking care of all the stuff. So for 8 years, I was able to become incredibly familiar with our collection, and our collection almost rounds out at about 1 million pieces, including
Wow.
three historic houses. So it's a very, very big collection, one of the largest I've ever worked with. So, but I came here after being an interim director at Rockport Art Association and Museum. And then before then, I was with the Lynn Museum as their assistant director.
Mm.
And so I'm all about museums. I actually teach about museums at the Harvard Extension, and I also teach arts administration at Endicott College. So, needless to say, I ooze museums.
You cover all aspects, that's for sure. For those not familiar, would you summarize the core mission of Historic Beverly, please?
Yes, our mission is to share Beverly history with everyone. And I know that, we're talking about an organization that dates back, hundreds of years. So how can we share Beverly history with everyone? And that was a struggle that we actually um, really tried to tackle in 2017 because our three properties, one dating to 1781, the other dating to the 17th century,
Mm.
they're not accessible. And so
Mm.
we really jumped into how can we make history accessible, specifically Beverly history accessible to everyone. And so that is how we started to look at technology. And one of the big things that we've been working on since 2017 is digitizing our collection and making that our collection of, like I said,
Mm.
almost 1 million pieces.
Wow.
Um, available on our website from around the world for free. And thankfully, I have a great story about Mr. Burns coming across our online collection and
Mm,
how that has really helped researchers moving forward. But
terrific.
we've really focused on trying to get our collection out there and accessible from the comfort of anyone's home. And then, of course, like we've uncovered with Zoom, a lot of our programs now can be hybrid, which means that we can do it in person as well as online. And so it's really been a fantastic challenge to figure out how we can make our history accessible to everyone. And so I really embrace that mission as a challenge, because it's our mission and with our vision to touch upon every piece of history. I think it's really important to be able to get it out there to everyone, no matter their capacity.
Terrific, terrific. Well, a very important site that we see here is the John Cabot House. Can you share a little bit about its history and importance and the role it plays today with regard to historic Beverly?
Yes. So the John Cabot House, right here on Cabot Street in Beverly, is the John Cabot House that dates to 1781. So it is considered a Revolutionary War
Mhm.
house. And John Cabot was from the Cabot family. Specifically, I should mention the three Cabot brothers. There was John, who owned this house, George, who owned a house just a couple blocks away that no longer exists. And then, of course, Andrew Cabot, whose house is current day City Hall.
Mm.
And the three Cabot brothers had a shipping company that was pretty much the largest shipping company around here. They were very wealthy. They had numerous boats, privateer vessels, and their own wharf just a couple of blocks
Mm.
from here. So they really did have the monopoly on seafaring.
Terrific, terrific. Well, moving on, definitely want to hear about the current exhibition. How did the American Revolution, the story of the war, and 28 paintings come about?
Well, it really has to do with that online collection.
Mm.
Um, the paintings themselves, there's 44 of them in our collection. They were gifted to us in 1902 and 1904 by a Beverly woman by the name of Susan Day Parker. And she had taken them on um, in her storage capacity in her house from Senator Henry Cabot Lodge. And so we had have these 44 in the collection. They were really easy for us to add to our online database. And it was through our online database that Mr. Burns and his team at Florentine Films found the collection
Ah,
and became interested. And so it was a cold February day 3 years ago when I received the phone call
wow.
from Florentine Films saying, "Oh, we found 7 images that we are interested in, and we found them in your online collection, and we'd love to come in and photograph them with the possibility that they actually will go into um, Ken Burns' upcoming documentary on the American Revolution." And so, being the collection manager at the time, these are my babies. I have
Yeah.
millions of babies being part of the collection. And so, I knew that if I pulled out 7, if I were to pull out a couple more, kind of to tease, the collection is fantastic. And so when they came to take a look at the 7 and photograph the 7, I had an additional 5 out for them to look at, which of course they fell in love with. And so subsequent visits took place as I kept adding more and more intrigue into the collection. And eventually, the team photographed all 44. with what we were told 28 going into the film and an additional 7 going into the companion book that came out at the same time
Wow.
that the movie did. But then, of course, we sat through the film screening, and Beverly was the only city that was allowed to actually show the screening at the same time that PBS did.
Mm,
And we did that for free here at a local theater.
fabulous.
And we sat through that whole 12 hours and found out that he actually used additional images in the
Wow.
film. And so there were 31 images used in the film, and an additional 2 more in the book. So 9 in the book. So 40 of the 44 came from our collection, which is absolutely, we're over the moon.
That's fabulous. And I think it's an incredible example how local historical societies can help share a richer, fuller picture of the history of the United States.
Exactly. And it really taps into what we were just talking about is our mission. And this is sharing Beverly's history with everyone. And much thanks to the fact that we were getting, our collection up online. And so, the Burns team had Googled, American Revolution paintings, and
Mm.
thankfully our collection came up.
Oh, perfect timing, perfect timing. How did you go about, for those who haven't had the opportunity to visit yet, organizing the paintings that are on display and how that's laid out for visitors?
So the way that they are laid out for visitors here at the Cabot House is that most of the land battle scenes are in chronological order.
Mm,
And that was kind of a given based on what we knew that Mr. Burns was going to do with his documentary. And so what we were trying to do is we were trying to put them in order based on how they would have been viewed episode by episode. There is a space in the exhibit where all of the maritime scenes are together. And we did that on purpose, not basically because of what Mr. Burns did in the film, but specifically because for Henry Cabot Lodge, he commissioned artists to do these absolutely amazing paintings. The first thing that I should mention that when they're in the book, they're all black and white. So some of these beautiful images that are done in color or have wonderful color highlights are not documented in the books.
mm,
And you see absolutely no color. The other thing that was really interesting is that Senator Lodge commissions all of these maritime paintings, but not one of them is used in his book. And
huh,
so the reason why we put all the maritime
mm,
scenes together is because we really wanted to showcase those paintings as, this is the first time that they're being seen. Whereas during the time that Senator Henry Cabot Lodge had commissioned all of the artworks, he puts them into his book and then he asks the artist to go on a grand tour with him to basically show off the paintings as well as sell his book. Well, he
nice.
never includes the maritime painters, therefore, the maritime artists don't have the ability to go on tour with him. So they kind of lose that opportunity
Mm,
to promote themselves.
mhm,
And so we really wanted to do kind of an after the fact promotion for them to show and to highlight how amazing their works were, even though, or how amazing their works are, yet they never make it into the book.
mhm. Well, we're fortunate to have a small selection of the paintings that are on display. So let's move on, take a look, hear about them. And I just have to say beforehand, there were some like the one we'll hear about here relating to Colonel Prescott and Bunker Hill that I had some understanding, but I learned so much. I think that's the other thing that is the power of the paintings. They
Yes.
motivated me, as I'm sure most visitors, to look up more about the event themselves afterwards. But a few words about this one, please.
Yes, so this one, as you said, is an image from Bunker Hill, but I want to make note specifically of the artist. His name is Frederick Coffey Yawn, and for our collection, 13 artists were commissioned from Scribner's Magazine, directly
Mm.
by Senator Henry Cabot Lodge. And it's Jan, the artist that you see, whose work is on the screen. It's Jan who actually creates 13 images
Wow.
for Lodge. So he's the most prolific in the group of artists. And it's really fascinating to see his work because he's only 23.
Oh,
And
wow.
I know. And so the artist is only 23, but to look at the works throughout the whole entire exhibit, his range is so varied. And so you can tell by the fact that he's commissioned by Lodge to do 13 works, that Lodge understands the capacity and the capability and the sheer talent that this artist has. And so I think you see here, there's that command of Prescott on the
Mm.
Hill, but then there's that emotion in those gentlemen at his feet. And for a 23-year-old, to get this across on canvas, this emotion, is really, really, breathtaking. And I think it's also important to recognize that Jan, being 23, is commissioned to do the works by Lodge, and he only has a year to do it. And so
Whoa.
he's turning out painting after painting after painting because he knows that this is going to make his career. And so this commission by Lodge is really setting Jan up for his golden years of painting.
Oh, what a fabulous background story
Yes.
to hear. Wow. Well, let's continue our tour. And here we hear of an event that, again, was unfamiliar to me, the defense of Fort Sullivan.
Yes. And so we have another yawn painting, and I think you can see the comparisons between the last and this one. Um, that he is challenging himself, and something that is really interesting that I had a conversation with the Florentine Films team about, specifically Mr. Burns, is the fact that these artworks are commissioned in 1898. So
Mm.
we're well over 100 years out from
Mm.
the American Revolution. And so these artists are trying to communicate what is taking place at that time 100 years out.
That's
And so
incredible.
to look at the history of each of these artists, the 13 artists that did our artworks, is to know and to understand that they were true researchers. They needed to understand these battles. They needed to understand the chaos, the emotion, and I think you see that here.
Oh,
There's
for
so
sure.
many places to look, from the ships offshore in the upper left hand corner to the chaos of the cannons blowing, and the militiamen carrying those cannons up, the cannonballs up to the cannons. You have, unfortunately, injured or deceased bodies on the ground, to that one image in the front of the man that's yelling, and that
Mm.
the intensity in his eyes.
Yeah.
There's a sense of panic there. And so there's an awful lot that takes place in these images. But like Florentine Films said, these are the visual narratives that we're following to tell the stories.
Incredible, incredible work. Just a quick word because we want to see some, definitely get into water battle, but another
Yes,
Jan one here
exactly.
is the capture of Stony Point in New York. And again, yeah, you look at the intensity. I appreciate you pointing out the emotion that you can see because it just amplifies the appreciation of
Right.
Jan's work in particular throughout. But let's keep it going and hear about
Yes.
this battle between the Ranger and the Drake with
Yes.
very famous John Paul Jones.
Yes. So this was done by an artist called named Carlton T. Chapman, and I think it's really outstanding because it's in color, and there's a richness to the coloring here that really adds again that emotion. But the detail, and I think that's something that the Burns team was really taken with, especially with the maritime scenes in seeing these in the film, the close up work that the Burns team did in the film to show, the light coming through those portholes and the cannon blows through the masts.
Yeah,
There's an awful lot of damage here, even though it doesn't necessarily read that way upon first look. But when you start to look at all of the detail, and then you have that boat in front of there are men who jumped ship. They needed to get off of there, because there was so much damage. And so it's a really fine painting.
for
And
sure.
then, of course, I mean, I'm so taken by that color.
It's very captivating. And as we get closer to the
Mhm.
end of the war, a famous battle of cowpens with General Washington.
Yes. So this artist, Tolstap, is absolutely magnificent in the fact that he conveys his artworks almost as drawings.
Mm,
And they read quite well in Lodge's book because, again, Lodge has his book published in all black and white. And so for this work, this is called Grisset. For this work to come across in this medium, almost photographic like, you really have to look at this closely to see any type of brushwork because it is so flat, but yet radiates these rich tones of
mm,
blacks, whites, and grays that it comes across as a photograph, as this
yes.
really detailed drawing. But again, different artists from Jan, different artists from Carlton, from Chapman, I mean, and you have that emotion. You have a death
Most
immediately up
definitely.
front, but then you've got all of that action taking place right there on the midground that we're drawn to. So
Now,
it's a magnificent
fascinating.
piece.
No, hearing you point out these features want to make me go back sooner than I intended to appreciate them even more. And unfortunately, they're going to be up until July 4th, so
Correct.
visitors and others have long time to have the opportunity to tour the exhibition. The one final one we happen to have appropriately to end the war and to end our viewing of the exhibition is this
Yes.
one, The Siege of Yorktown.
Yes. And that beautiful white horse that is,
Mm,
the true identifying marker of General George Washington. And so we are again looking at a Frederick Coffey-on painting,
mm.
and one that is in full color, which is a rare in the exhibit because everything is so dark and dull. But we have the brightness of color here, and we have it's really interesting the way that this painting is divided, because you have the overseeing of the general on the left, and then you have a lot of activity on the right, but then you draw your eye down to that gentleman on the far right, who has the aftermath of battle. He's been injured, thankfully
Hmm.
spared, but this is quite a story that we read left to right, and that is a story that continues on for many, many years during the American Revolution.
Abby, what do you hope viewers take away from touring the exhibit?
So I think it's really important to see these for what they are. And I say that because, like I had mentioned, these are pieces that were done over 100 years after the war. So we're tapping into
Hmm.
history. And there are some viewers who come in and say, oh, that doesn't seem accurate. And yes, that is probably the case. However, I think it's really important to remember that 100 years after the war, 250 years after the war, they represent individuals who were not perfect. These are, failed people in different ways, but they are people that come together to do one thing, and that is to gain their freedom and to fight
Hmm.
for their freedom. So, all walks of life coming together with one goal.
Hmm.
And I think that resonates from 1775 and 1776 to 1898 when Lodge is writing his book. And then, of course, this year when Mr. Burns puts out his American Revolution documentary. The story is the same. And at so many different times throughout our 250 years of history, the players are still the same. We're
Hmm.
coming together, all walks of life, with that singular image, with that singular hope. It's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Hmm. Well put, well put. In the closing minute or two, in addition to the exhibit, there's lots of other things going on with regard to historic Beverly. Can you give viewers just a little sense of the different type of programming and events uh, you put on throughout the year?
Yes, I should say that the exhibit is free
Mm.
to come into the Cabot House. It's completely free to visit straight through the 4th of July. And then other types of programs that we have exhibit programming such as behind the scenes, exhibit tours with me. We will have additional programming coming up for the American Revolution. Um, such as a Revolutionary War house tour, a
Mm.
Revolutionary War cemetery walks. But then, of course, Beverly's celebrating their 400th anniversary next year. And so we're the keepers of it all. And
Yeah,
so an
yep,
awful
yep.
lot of our programming is going to tap into all of the history of Beverly, from
Terrific.
colonial history all the way up through the industrialization, industrial age, because of course we have the United Shoe Machinery Corporation here to talk about. So we have an awful lot coming up next year. So anyone who wants to visit historicbeverly.net under our programs, you can see we have so much going on. A lot of it is free and open to the public, and then very minimal admission fees for other programming. So
Terrific,
it's an
terrific.
exciting year.
Oh, most definitely. I know already since the Ken Burns exposure, uh, viewership, visitors has increased noticeably, and that'll just continue going forward.
Yeah.
So definitely taking advantage of all the programming that you just mentioned. Well, Abby, unfortunately, we've come to the end of our program. I want to thank you again so much for taking the time to be here, for sharing
Thank you.
about Historic Beverly, the Cabot House, the exhibit, the incredible collaboration with Ken Burns. I just want to wish you continued success with future endeavors.
Thank you. You too. Thank you so much, Jay.
Pleasure. Also want to thank those of you watching for joining us and hope you'll be able to tune in next time.